Hi everyone, very good evening. This is Simran Kaur from Master Trust. So we are here again with the next episode of our webinar series, Street Experts. So today our expert is Mr. Simranjeet Singh Bhatia, working with us as Senior Analyst, Advisory and Research Department based at Delhi office. So he will take you through banking sector, and we will also have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So if any of the participants have any query, can write it down in the Q&A box or can raise their hand for the query and we will allow them to speak. So now I would like to hand over the call to Mr. Simranjeet Singh Bhatia. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Simran. Hi, everyone. A very good evening. Today, we are going to cover the banking sector. And we will going to cover in the banking sector, first, the key terminologies, which is very important for us to understand in the banking sector. Secondly, we will talk about the FY23 overview, how the banking sector has performed in FY23. Third, we will talk about the asset quality of the banks. And fourth, we will talk about the banking outlook in the upcoming years. So let's start with the key terminologies, which is very important for us to understand. First is net interest income. Net interest income is very important to understand the banking survival. For example, this is one of the most important profitability measure for any of the bank. It talks about the bank survival. For example, अगर आपने बैंक से हाउसिंग लोन लिया of ₹10 lakh of 1 year and the bank charge you 8% of interest rate on that 10 lakh rupees, तो बैंक ने आपसे कितना लोन लिया, कितना बैंक ने आपसे कमाया, that is 80,000 rupees. Similarly, जो हमारी सेविंग्स होती है, हम लोग कहीं ना कहीं वो बैंक्स के अंदर we keep on deposit in the form of savings account, FDs, term deposit. तो बैंक हमको उसके ऊपर एक वो हमें ब्याज दर के रूप में वो हमें 1 साल के बाद कुछ पैसा देता है. अगेन फॉर एग्जांपल, अगर आपने बैंक के अंदर 10 लाख रुपीस आपने अगर एफडी में 1 साल के लिए करवाए, बैंक ने आपको दिया 6% का इंटरेस्ट कॉस्ट, तो बैंक ने आपको कितना दिया साल के एंड में, दैट इज 60,000 रुपीस. और बैंक ने जब हमने बैंक से हाउसिंग लोन लिया था दैट इज ऑफ 10 लाख रुपीस, तो हमने तो बैंक ने कितना कमाया था आपसे 80,000 रुपीस, दैट इज 8% ऑफ द इंटरेस्ट कॉस्ट दे हैव चार्ज ऑन द हाउसिंग लोन. तो बैंक ने कितना कमाया पहले 1 साल में, दैट इज 80,000 रुपीस. सेकेंड, जब हमने बैंक में डिपॉजिट्स कराए 10 लाख रुपीस एफडी के रूप में 1 साल में, तो बैंक ने हमें दिया 6% का ब्याज दर, तो बैंक ने हमें कितना दे दिया 60,000 रुपए. जब हम इन दोनों को माइनस करते हैं, दैट इज 80,000 minus 60,000, that is 20,000 rupees. So that 20,000 rupees becomes the net interest income for the bank which they have earned in 1 year. So what it clearly says that we all have to keep a track that the net interest income of the bank should keep on increasing year on year, and it should continue to remain stable over a period of time for the bank survival. Let's go to the next slide, that is cost to income ratio. This is the most important ratio for the bank's operating efficiency. Again, we will understand this with the help of the example. For example, अगर एक बैंक है, उसकी पैन इंडिया में लेट्स से 50 ब्रांचेस है, तो बैंक ने उस 50 ब्रांचेस को रन करने में इंकर किए साल में लेट्स से 10 करोड़ रुपीस. अब बैंक के लिए जो कॉस्टिंग है वो क्या है, इन द ऑपरेटिंग एक्सपेंसेस, दैट इज द सैलरी which they give to the employees. Second, power and fuel expenses. Third is the rent of that particular branch. तो लेट्स से बैंक ने 50 ब्रांचेस जो थी बैंक की, उसमें उन्होंने साल में 10 CR का एक्सपेंसेस इंकर किया. सिमिलरली इन्हीं सब 50 ब्रांचेस ने बैंक के लिए कुछ बिजनेस भी किया होगा पूरे साल में. लेट्स से बैंक ने अगर इन 50 ब्रांचेस ने साल के अंदर जो बिजनेस जनरेट किया बैंक के लिए, वो इन्होंने किया 20 CR का। तो कहने का मतलब ये हुआ कि बैंक ने जब पहले इन 50 ब्रांचेस को रन करने के जो ऑपरेटिंग एक्सपेंसेस खर्च किए दैट इज ऑफ 10 CR, और इन्हीं 50 ब्रांचेस ने जब इनके लिए बिजनेस किया तो उसमें बैंक ने नेट इंटरेस्ट इनकम, जिससे अभी हमने डिस्कस किया, वो इन्होंने 50 वो इन लोगों ने 20 CR का दे हैव जनरेटेड द नेट इंटरेस्ट इनकम। तो 10 डिवाइडेड बाय 20 into 100 becomes the 20%, it becomes the 50% cost to income ratio for the bank। तो कहने की बात यह है कि ओवर ए पीरियड ऑफ टाइम इस रेशियो का घटना कम होना इट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर द बैंक्स ऑपरेटिंग एफिशिएंसी पैरामीटर। अदरवाइज कहीं ऐसा ना हो कि इसमें कॉस्टिंग बढ़ती जा रही है और इनकम बैंक एक कम जनरेट कर रहा है, विच विल not have a good impression over a period of time, and it will have a big question mark on the operating efficiency of the bank. So we should keep in notice that over a period of time cost to income ratio continues to remain stable, and all the branches of the banks should generate greater income as comparison to the operating expenses which they incur. Third, let's move forward, that is CASA ratio. CASA talks about the current account and the savings account for the bank. Again, we will understand this in a very layman language. For example, अगर किसी एक बैंक के पास 100 crores के let's say उसके पास एक total deposits हैं, अब बैंक के पास total deposits क्या हो सकते हैं? It can be in the form of saving account, FDs, term deposits, current account. Okay, तो बैंक के पास let's say 100 crore के उनके पास एक total deposits है, जिसमें से अगर हमें यह पता चल जाए कि बैंक के पास कितना कासा है, अब लेट्स से बैंक के पास जो कासा है वो है लेट्स से ऑफ ₹50 crores, तो बैंक का कासा रेशियो कितना हो गया, दैट इज 50 डिवाइड बाय 100 into 100 व्हिच बिकम्स 50%। अब ये बैंक के लिए क्यों इतना इंपॉर्टेंट होता है इसको एक मोबिलाइज करना, इट इज वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट बिकॉज व्हाई इट इज इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर द बैंक, इट इज इंपॉर्टेंट बिकॉज जो बैंक कासा पे जो ब्याज दर देता है एज कंपेयर टू द एफडीज इट इज जनरली लेस। तो बैंक इसको जितना अगर मोबिलाइज कर पाए इस कासा को दैट इज ऑफ 50 CR, इट विल बी वेरी गुड एंड इट विल बी द वेरी लो कॉस्ट इनकम फॉर द बैंक्स, और बैंक इस 50 CR को ना दे कैन इजिली लेंड टू द अदर टू अदर ऑपरेशंस आल्सो। तो इट विल कंटिन्यू टू इंप्रूव द costing funding of the bank in the future. So we all have to remember one thing कि ये रेशियो जितनी ज्यादा इंक्रीज होती रहेगी it will be a source of the low cost funding for the bank, और अगर ये बहुत डिक्लाइन हो रही है it is not a very great signal for the banks. So the banks always try to mobilize the CASA, the higher CASA over a period of time. So we can move to the next slide. Provision coverage ratio. Provision coverage ratio is very important. Actually, what does this ratio tells about? This ratio says, let's say, again, we will understand this more with the example, otherwise it will become tough. PCR means, let's say, अगर बैंक के पास 10 लोग एक लोन लेने के लिए आते हैं, 10 customers came to the bank to take a loan, तो बैंक ने लेट्स से उनको दिया 100 CR का लोन, लेट्स से उनको दिया उन्होंने 10 CR का लोन, ठीक है, तो बैंक ने उनको लेंड कर दिए 10 crore रुपीस, बट बैंक को कहीं ना कहीं ये एक एंटिसिपेशन होती है कि ये जो 10 लोग हैं इसमें से कोई ना कोई डिफॉल्ट हो सकता है या कोई ना कोई देरी कर सकता है इंटरेस्ट कॉस्ट पे करने में। तो बैंक क्या करता है, बैंक फ्यूचर की अनसर्टेनिटी को एक फ्यूचर की अनसर्टेनिटी को देखते हुए ये लोग क्या करते हैं, बैंक्स क्या करते हैं, दे विल कीप सर्टेन परसेंटेज ऑफ दैट एज ए प्रोविजन, व्हिच मींस लेट्स से उन्होंने अगर 5% ऑफ 100 CR का उन्होंने एक कर दिया प्रोविजन व्हिच बिकम्स योर 50 lakhs, तो बैंक ये मान के चल रहा है कि अगर इसमें से कोई भी out of these 10 people, these 10 customers, if they can delay or if they can default, सो वो फ्यूचर की अनसर्टेनिटी को देखते हुए वो उसका प्रोविजन आज ही कर रहा है। सो दिस रेशियो सेज कि बैंक जो है वो एक फ्यूचर की अनसर्टेनिटी को आज ही बियर कर रहा है, एंड हायर दिस रेशियो, higher the PCR ratio, it is beneficial for the bank to keep them in a very strong stage when the uncertain times will come. So PCR is very, very important for the banks, and we should keep in track that this should keep on increasing and this should continue to remain stable over a period of time. So we can move to the next slide. That is gross non-performing assets. Actually, to the whole banking sector, this is one of the most important ratio, that is gross NPA. Again, we will understand this with very, very basic example. अगर हम देखें कि जो बैंक है उसके लिए एक सोर्स ऑफ इनकम क्या है, that is the loan which they have given to the customer, जो उसके ऊपर एक ब्याज दर वो लोग जो कमाते हैं, that is a major source of income for the banks. अब क्या होता है, let's say अगर एक कस्टमर है, उसने उसकी अगर उसने ड्यू डेट पे अपनी ब्याज दर नहीं दी, एंड ओवर एंड अबव अगले 90 दिन तक लेट्स से उसने अगर अपनी ब्याज दर दी नहीं जो उसकी इंटरेस्ट कॉस्ट ड्यू थी, that will become the NPA for the banks. And ये रेशियो जितना बढ़ता जाता है, it will create the question mark on the bank survival first, and secondly it will create another question mark कि जो बैंक की जो lending practices है that is not in a very good shape. So we all have to understand this कि gross NPA should continue to remain on the downward trajectory, and it should continue to remain on the downward trend. Only then it will show that the bank's underwriting practices are very, very great. So gross NPA ratio, control of gross NPA is very, very important for any of the bank, and it should continue to remain in the downward trajectory over a period of time for the bank survival. So now let's talk about the overview of the banking sector, how they have performed in FY23. In FY23, now we will talk about the banking industry as a whole. We can see from the slide that the bank total deposit have increased by 11% YOY in FY23. Similarly, bank net advances have grown 18% over FY22, which clearly shows that our economy is growing at a very stronger pace, and there is a demand of the loans from corporates, from the individuals, and from the various business perspectives. Third, net interest income, which we have just discussed in the very first slide, it has increased by 23% for the whole banking sector in FY23. Similarly, on PAT, we can say that the PAT of the banking industry has increased by 42% to 2.31 lakh crore. Increase in PAT clearly shows that the bank's provisions, net interest income has the increase in PAT clearly shows that the bank's net interest income has increased, provisions have came down, and the operating efficiency of the banking sector as a whole has improved in FY23 over FY22. And the last is gross NPA, which is at 3.9%, which has declined by 203 basis point over FY22. Again, here we can say that the banking sector asset quality has improved over FY22. This is the net interest margin for the banking sector as a whole. And as you see, it continues its upward trajectory from FY19 to FY23. In FY19, it was 2.7%, and in FY23, it was at 3.2%. So we can clearly say that the banks are earning good, and their net interest income is also increasing with the increase of the net interest income. In this slide, this is very, very important. You can see that the bank's advances, that the banking sector advances growth have increased to 18% in FY23, which was at a decline of 6.2% in FY20 and 5.3% in FY21. So in the last 2 years, we can clearly say that there's a demand of credit from the various business houses, from the various corporates, from the various industries, and from the individuals as well, which is which bodes well for the banking sector as a whole. And our deposit growth has continued to remain on a very steady trend of close to 11.5% over the past 3 years. Gross NPA. Now, this is the most important gist which I can say, that I will just take you to some of the examples that around 6 or 7 years back, when we talk about FY15, the gross NPA of the banking system was close to 10,50,000 crores, which clearly says that our gross NPA of the whole banking sector was at double digits, which is, and in FY18 it has touched at a peak of 11.18%. But as you can see from the graph, over a period of time, it has eventually decreased from 11.18 to 9, 8.5, then 7, then it is at 3.9% if in FY23. This has been actually possible because of the stringent policies by our RBI, by our government, which has created the fears in the mind of the founders, promoters who have taken the loan from the banks, and the time has come for them to pay back to the banks, and they can't hide it in the future. So banking sector asset quality has sharply improved, and it has came down from 11.18% to 3.9% in FY23, which is the main reason why, which is the one of the most utmost reason why the Nifty bank, why the Nifty PSU banks are performing well in the market, and which has created a lot of confidence in the investors also, both in DIs as well as FIs. Now see the trajectory. If we can take some of the examples of our public sector banks. For example, if you can take the example of PNB, it was having a 15.5% of gross NPA 5 years back. Now, in FY23, it has came down to 8.75%. This is what we are talking about, that there's a greater reduction in the gross NPA, and the asset quality of the banks have improved. Same in case of SBI, it has fallen down from 7.53% to 2.78%. And this is the gross NPA of the private sector banks. If you take the example of Karur Vysya Bank, it has decreased from 8.8% to 2.27%. Again, which I want to tell you that this the improvement in this ratio is lightening the bank's balance sheet, and they have now more money, and they are lending to the various parts of the segment freely now. This is the asset quality of the banks in Q1 FY24. In Q1 FY24, just announced, in the first quarter of FY24, if you can see the examples of Union Bank, Canara Bank, Central Bank, HDFC, Bandhan, IndusInd, ICICI, Kotak, and IDBI Bank, they all have improved on this parameter, and it has decreased on YOY basis to this level. So it is really indicating that the asset quality of the banking system is improving. People are paying them back, and the banks are having the higher recoveries from their customers, which is again bringing down the gross NPAs for the banks. So asset quality of the banks has improved, but what has led to all this, how it has improved in the past couple of years? We can take these three examples, that there is setting up of the NARC by the government, by the RBI, and they have taken that, and they have decided that they will take the stress assets of over 500 crores from the banks, which can lighten the bank's balance sheet and which can bring down their gross NPAs also. So banking sector overview, we expect that the banking sector will continue to outperform in upcoming years on the base of the, first of all, strong credit growth. strong recoveries. Then there's a greater demand from the infrastructure side, from the batteries EV segment going forward, and there will be a greater demand going forward from the SMEs also as well. So which clearly shows that going forward the banking sector is at a very inflection point, and we can see the further stability in the banking sector as well. So thank you, and we can go for the questions. We can invite the questions and answers for the session. Okay, the first question is from the Venkatesh Rajesh. He's asking, he's talking about whether we are expecting growth only in the banking sector or in the NBFCs. See, basically, we are expecting growth in the banking sector. Why? Because again, as I've discussed, that there's a strong credit demand from the various industries, and the asset quality of the banks has improved, and our credit growth is still at 18%, and we can expect that the credit growth will continue to be in the double digits going forward. Okay, there's one other question from the participant, that is, what are the top 5 banks to invest? See, you can go for SBI. They are doing very good in terms of the public sector banks, and they are the leading ones also. Second, you can look for the Canara Bank in the public sector domain. Third, in the private sector segment, you can go for the Federal Bank, Karur Vysya Bank, and the last is City Union Bank, where you can plan to invest in these top 5 banks going forward. Okay, one of the participants, Sanjay Mathur, have asked the question that where we are seeing the more value, in PSU banks or in private sector banks. So I want to say that we are seeing value in both the segments, whether it is PSU banks and the private sector banks. But one should not have the biasness that public sector banks are bad because private sector banks are quite good. Now we are at a that juncture where both PSU banks and private sector banks have shown the massive improvement in their asset quality front. So I believe going forward, you should invest both in public sector banks as well as in the private sector banks. So this question from Sanjeev Grover, that what are the expectations from the monetary policy to be announced on 10th of August? See, on monetary policy front, I expect that the RBI will continue to maintain the pause trend. Okay, and we will see the rise in the interest rates maybe after a couple of quarters, because as we all know, the prices of vegetables have increased, and which might allow the RBI to increase the interest rate, but that is again the big question mark. So, but in the upcoming policy, we are expecting that RBI will continue to pause the interest rates. So one of the participants, Prabhat Jha, have asked the question, what is the role of small finance sector in the coming years? Okay, see, in terms of the small finance banks, we can say that they are playing the fantabulous role to tap the population in the under-penetrated regions where the larger banks have not been there, and they're catering to the mass segment at the bottom of pyramid level. So I believe they are very important for the financial system as a whole. Is investing in small finance banks safe? Yes, you can say that you can easily invest in the small finance banks, but you have to always keep in one mind, and we all have to keep one point when we are investing, whether in banks, in small finance banks, or in any of the NBFCs, that their capitalization, that the bank should be, bank, NBFC or the small NBFCs should be well capitalized, which is in the form of the CAR. So that they can take any of the upcoming or the future losses on their balance sheet. If the bank or the NBFC have a very low capital ratio on their balance sheet, then it will create a severe problem for them. Otherwise, if the small finance bank or any of the private sector bank are having the higher capital adequacy ratio, which is above 9%, for the banks, and for the NBFCs, it should be above 15%. It is continue to remain safe, and you can continue to invest in that particular banks. Short-term view on AU Small Finance Bank, they are doing good, to be very honest, and all the ratios, whether it is gross NPA, their NIMS margin, their profitability continue to be in the stronger trend. So in the short term, this AU Small Finance Bank have done well post COVID period also. So you can continue to remain invested in this AU Small Finance Bank. Okay, that's a very interesting question. Has Yes Bank came out of the dark phase? We can say that Yes Bank have came out of that dark phase which they have seen 3 or 4 years back, and which has caused a huge loss to the bank. So now the bank balance sheet is improving. Secondly, their CASA ratio is doing good, and the bank is well capitalized with the help of SBI and from the various other private sector banks which have invested in the Yes Banks over the last couple of years. So yes, we can say that somehow that the troubled times of Yes Bank is almost over, but I would only advise that you should invest in a staggered manner in the Yes Bank. Prabhaj has asked, in private bank, IndusInd Bank, the bank of late has done good again on their asset quality front, on their CASA deposit. So right now, again, the asset quality of IndusInd Bank have improved in the last couple of years. So I will advise that one should continue to remain invested, and on the corrections, you can continue to add more in the IndusInd Bank. Okay, Jyotika Saini have asked that, can you please repeat again what are the parameters indicating strong growth of the bank? See, the strong growth of the banks can be judged from the 3 important parameters. First is net interest income. Second is the gross NPA. Downward trajectory in the gross NPA is very, very important for the bank survival. And third is the CASA ratio is very important for the bank, because it is a low cost of funds for the bank, which can help them to lend to the other groups, and which can also the CASA, higher the CASA ratio will help the banks to bring down their costing part also. So 3 things: CASA, NII, and the gross NPA are very, very important for the strong growth of any of the bank. Okay, one of the participants have asked why they were asking about the SBI results in the Q1 and why that has gone down. See, I will tell you one thing, that the asset quality of the SBI in Q1 FY24 continue to improve on year-on-year basis. Secondly, their CASA was good, but the only concern was some concern on the net interest margin, which the market have not taken very strongly. So due to little bit of weakening in the net interest margin have led to the decline in the share price of SBI. But otherwise, the bank business, the bank gross asset quality continue to improve in FY24 as well. Okay, one of the participants have asked on the Bandhan Bank. So on the Bandhan Bank, I can say that one should be watchful for at least next couple of quarters, for at least next 2 to 3 quarters before taking the further investment decision, because the bank is overcoming from the gross asset quality issues, and we can get more clarity post next 2 to 3 quarters in FY24. Then the picture will become more clear how the bank is tackling its gross asset quality issues with them. Okay, one of the participants have asked me about any view on the IDBI capital. On IDBI, see, it's not on the IDBI capital. Basically, we can say that on all the public sector banks, whether it is IDBI, whether it is Canara, PNB, your SBIs of the world, they all have improved on the asset quality front in the last 5 years. So though people earlier 5 or 6 years back were not expecting any of the improvement in the public sector bank, but everyone has gone for a surprise that the asset quality of these public sector banks have improved in a tremendous manner. So my view is extremely positive on the IDBI Bank as well for the upcoming 1 or 2 years down the line. So one of the participants have asked the view on the IDFC First Bank. So I can say that the IDFC Bank is extremely doing good, and the legacy bad assets they have around 2 or 3 years back, it has all gone away and it has extremely came down in the last couple of years. So again, on the IDFC Bank, the theory is very clear, that concepts are very clear, that that the bank's gross NPAs have improved, CASA is improving, so one can continue to remain invested in the IDFC First Bank. Okay, I will take the last question. Why the PNB is trading at such a low price? We all know that the PNB performance, gross asset quality has came into the question post that Nirav Modi scam, which has bank has taken the huge hit on their balance sheet. But again, in the last 2 to 3 years, we can see that the bank is that the PNB is improving extremely well on the asset quality, and they are bringing down all the bad assets, and they're clearing all the bad assets from their balance sheets. So I believe that PNB, which was there for some wrong reasons in the past couple of years back, they have overcome, and one should continue to remain invest. And if on any decline you will get further corrective prices, one should continue to invest more in the PNB Bank. So I believe that is that was the last question to be asked. So thank you, for participating in the webinar. Hope you all have liked the session. Thanks a lot and have a nice day.